Hey, Phantom. Good to see you, sir. We're cutting it right close to the wire here tonight.
Right under, we made it.
Well, you know, these post-work streams, they get a little bit touchy sometimes, but it's going to be a fun one tonight, I think. And actually, it's well, I'll save that for later. So back to what we were talking about. I think just in general, you know, I love what we do here in LMA, and this is what I want tonight, and I'll say this again as we get more viewers in. I want this to be as much an interactive, I want ideas from the viewers. You know, they see what I do every week, and they may have some suggestions on things I could do to be more immersive.
So yeah, and like, what do they find to be immersive is a good thing to ask.
Exactly. So I thought we might have a poll on that. And then to help give you a heads up, I also think it would be good to have a poll on the length of LMA.
Okay, it's like how...
Yeah, like could we go, because I've had this come up a lot. People are saying they'd like it to be a little bit longer. Now, I don't really want to go later, but I could start at 5:30. So would they like a 90-minute instead of a 60-minute? I have, to some degree, you would, okay, wow, it's already happening. Phantom, love it to be a little bit longer. Well, you know, that's some of the feedback I've gotten, and I could do that about 30 minutes longer, and that might give us more time leading up into our raid of J. I've also ascribed to the, you know, philosophy of leave them wanting more. You know, I never want to be just, you know, so ponderous with content and hours of streaming that people go, gosh, we've had enough of Blue Box, we've had enough of this guy. But yeah, it seems to be everybody would like this to be a little bit longer. We'll do a poll. And
but like, how many times after the end of the stream are we either one of us like, hey, we could have talked about this for another
every single time. That's exactly right. Every single time. No, Set Monkey, I don't mind a 24-hour stream. I'm not talking about a once, you know, like even like charity streams, and we got GaryCon coming up. I just did Virtual Greyhawk Con. I don't mind going long on occasion, but it's like, how much can you push out every single week where people still want to hear your voice? You know, it's like, yeah, it has felt like that, Robert. It has felt like we're just getting going, and then it's over. So Jay Birchfield is on with us, and he's actually one of the principal pushers of this. He has repeatedly told me he thought this should be longer, that I don't stream long enough. Jay, that's gracious of you. I really don't want to go long into your stream. I like being able to raid into your stream right as it's getting started, but hey, anything's possible. Hey, Steve, Manda, good to see you both. Welcome with us tonight, and let's just go ahead and jump over. We'll kick this off live. And of course, as always, I am joined by the lovely, talented, and occasionally vicious Evelyn. Hey, Celtic Boar. And welcome. My transition didn't kick off. I'll have to figure out what that's about. But we're good, and everything sounds good. So tell me if you have any audio issues, any video issues, but I think we're past all of that. And tonight, we are talking about the subject of DM immersion and creating a really immersive campaign. Now, as always, we want to talk about our sponsors. And we are so thankful to sponsors, and I'm going to talk about one in particular tonight. But you have, of course, Cozy Gamer, our newest sponsor. Hey, Set Monkey, glad it all sounds good. Those Cozy Gamer dice have been hot. The crits have been flowing. And of course, I mentioned that Cozy Gamer is going to be creating custom Blue Box dice for us in 2021. So you will have dice with the Blue Box logo on them available for giveaway in 2021. Yes, and I'm trying to make all that audio stuff work. Thank you, C. Carson. Good to see you, Chris. I'm glad that was good. And then our other sponsors, we always thank Atris Minis. We thank Frederica Draws. I had multiple correspondents. So I want everyone to know. So you've heard me talk about Terrain Crate and Mantic Games now for 2.5 months, and you still have not seen anything. It's not their fault. there's been some wonky stuff happening with shipping. And I had a great conversation with Martin over email the last couple of days. They've sent out another shipment to me. I now have a FedEx tracking number, and we should be seeing Mantic Games Terrain Crate materials, not only for the table, but also as giveaways here in the next couple of weeks. But then, of course, our original sponsor, and don't blame Steve. Blood Wild is not at fault. Well, maybe he is. I don't know. What'd you tell Martin, Steve? But our original sponsor, the OG Blue Box supporter. And I've got some really cool stuff to tell about him, so let's go ahead and run this. Dragon Crafting Guild. Dragon Crafting Guild creates the most amazing trays, strange static electric effects, beautiful resins, peerless artisan craftsmanship, and they are, of course, guaranteed to roll more nat 20s. Except not really, but now we say, but actually, yes, really. So I'll show you on Sunday a cool new tray I just got in from DCG. I have the most amazing stuff that he has sent, and I've got 2 more coming. So we have custom trays. We have Beholder themed trays. He said, if you are on his Instagram, he posted today. He sent one to me today, which he wanted to keep for himself. It's not even available on his store, and it will be available as a Blue Box giveaway here very soon. But also, I think what I was most encouraged about, and Evelyn, I haven't shared this with you yet. Yeah, they are sweet, Dingbat. Thank you. Hey, Lord Forth. He said his orders were way up last month, and he said most of them were Blue Box fans. Yeah. And as a streaming channel, that's what you want to hear. You really, hey, Mr. Potato Butt, thank you for the cheer. You're right up there with like Ultra Fart Lord and Wu-Tang Piglet and some of my favorite usernames. You know, as a streamer, to actually know that you're giving back to your sponsors in the manner that you hoped you would originally, that just actually, I will not lie, I didn't tear up, but I got a little bit misty when he sent me that message. Exactly, Jay. That's right. All right. So tonight, as I said earlier, I really want input from the chat tonight, and I'm going to be watching it closely. We're going to talk about how to create immersive D&D campaigns. And I've got some notes here. I spent a little bit of time with research. I have One Dragon magazine I'm going to point to today that we can talk about. I want to thank Jay, as always, a great help to our channel. He is the original sponsor of our Greyhawk Awakening campaign. Greyhawk Awakening Session 1 is Lord Gazumba. And he has also been such a good sport about Yaj Tox, the heavy cologne-wearing ladies' man, who had all kinds of, ooh, that's gross, and eek comments happening on the chat last night, that was so much fun. And he's a great sport about it. I'm really nervous about what might appear in his campaign at some point with me. So, before I get started, Evelyn, I want you to talk about this, because you actually, I think it was Hutchback that gave this topic as an original idea, and I've talked about some of these things before, but we're going to dive deeper. Why don't you start us off tonight and tell us, you know, what do you think plays into an immersive campaign? What does immersion even mean? And let's see how that kicks off the stream, and I've got my notes here we'll get into in a second.
All right, well, to me, an immersive campaign is one that you can really get into as a player, that you feel very involved and invested in the world that you're playing in. That means, you know, actually feeling as if, you know, the other characters you're playing with are real 3-dimensional characters. They're not just, you know, the people sitting across from you at the table, but they are all heroes with their own stories, and the you know, the monsters and the NPCs that you meet along the way are actual real 3-dimensional people that have their own stories and their own motivations, and you know, just, you know, a really good story is an immersive one that pulls you in and makes you feel part of it.
No, that's so well said. And in the corporate world, we call that engagement. But you want people to feel like they're heavily engaged, they're part of what's going on. And you described it well. The two words you initially started with were involved and invested. So I want to hear from the chatters, and I want to hear from you. Hey, Retro, good to see you, sir. Exclamity, welcome. So what makes a gaming session for you, whether it's in person or on stream? You do both with me. You've run your own stuff. But what makes you feel like you're involved and invested? How do you become immersed?
Well, for me, at least, having really excellent both DM and players to play with, ones that are actually actively participating in creating the story that you're all, telling together. Because that's really what it is at the end of the day. All of the combat and all of the role play comes together to make a story that you are all participating in. D&D is a collaborative experience, and it is, to have, in my personal opinion, to have a really good campaign, it has to be actively, every player plays a part, and player includes the DM, I would say, but everybody plays their part in making the story function, and pulling, the elements from the backstories and connecting and finding connections between characters, not just, nobody is. I saw a really good point about this actually last night. You are not a main character in a party. You are a party of main characters. So, the idea is that no one should be the predominant person. You should all be actively helping each other to have the moments that you need to help your character explore not only their history, but what is, their present and where they're going.
No, that is so well said. And I took a bunch of notes, not only on what you were saying, but some of the chat tonight. You guys are all syncing up really well, and it's expanding my list. And I want to pound through all of this as quickly as I can tonight, because I think this is so good. Good to see Anna B. Meyer with us tonight. Thank you so much, Anna Fraley. Good to see you. I think I got everybody else earlier. And so let's dive into some of these topics. And some of the ones I noted from you, all players being involved. And I think it was Robert, or no, it was Myamorph that said the same thing. He said, Captain Myamorph said the whole group being in it. And we've all seen that, where, you have players that can dominate. I can be that way. When I'm a player, I get so enthused and involved, and I tend to play these, these PCs that are very engaging and over the top. And you can look around, and the next thing you know, everybody else is quiet. Yeah, that's not what you want. So as a DM, you can have those moments, and let's start with this one. So getting all players involved creates immersion. Last night, we had a section of the campaign in Greyhawk Awakening where you had two PCs that were interacting with each other, and it was about 10, I don't know, you could probably time it, but like 10, 12, 14 minutes where they were dialoguing. You remember that, Evelyn? Mm-hmm. And that was who?
That was, hold on.
No, so I'll probably put that. So it's Gimbal and Brim. So
right,
right. So like they started exchanging thoughts, and Gimbal was on his shoulder, and it was great. Brim started revealing more of his backstory. Right, he was telling you about what he went through, and as a DM, man, that's fantastic. You want that to happen, but you don't want that to go on so long that you have 4 or 5 other people standing around twiddling their thumbs. So it's a fine balance as a DM, and I'm not suggesting I have it right. It's an art, not a science. But you want to let players have that moment in the sun, shine with their monologue or their dialogue, but also make sure you keep everyone else involved. Thoughts?
Well, and I was going to say, and as a player as well, it's important for us to support each other in our exploration of these conversations and things. It is important that everyone recognizes that, this is a moment I might need to step back from and let someone else have their time right now. It's not about my character in this moment. Like, someone else needs to have this conversation. And that is, important as a player to player, you know, recognizing those moments and embracing those moments, because it helps, I think, with that development of making your character more like three-dimensional.
No, well said. And look, I think a lot of that's about players. And by the way, I'm really upset at Jay Birchfield 3 right now. Yeah, thank you, Krenzelin. Jay Birchfield 3, he knows we've made several adjustments. I've improved my AV. I've invested a bunch of money in an Alienware PC. I've upgraded I got a fiber connection to my house. And he said, yes, he can see the improvement in quality because he can now see my gray hair much better. That's just not nice. That's not nice at all. Hey, Prometheus. Yes, Discord for off-session chat. That's another thing I didn't have on my list. All right, we'll do a recap for people that come in late on all these topics, because there's so many ways to create immersion, and I've got some things we haven't even talked about yet, but all these are great things to add too. So players, you said this, Evelyn, players recognizing when it's time for another player to shine.
Yep.
And that is certainly a sign of a great player group. And I think our Greyhawk Awakening campaign is the best at it, but even our Rune Lords, our Sunday session, it's pretty good. Occasionally, Cade might jump in over the top of something, but that's Cade's character. But everybody really seems to respect those moments in the spotlight, which is great. But I think also, and this is not me patting myself on the back, this is me putting the responsibility on the DM. The DM creates that environment. You as a dungeon master must be conscious of, not in an artificial way, okay, you get 30 seconds, you get 60 seconds, you get 60 seconds, you get 90, not that way, but just in general, being aware of the table and making sure that you pull other players in. If you've got a quiet player, hey, what do you think about this? And if you have a player that's shining in the spotlight, creating that space for them to do that. I think that's one of the most important things, not just for immersion, but for fun. All right, so some of the comments, we'll talk about Discord in a second. You don't want to have to deal with it every day, Phantom. Yes, if everyone's up for it, great. One person doesn't have the time to dedicate between sessions, they can feel left behind. No, that's right. And as a DM, you can still help with that. You know, you can find ways to pull them in. So you can insert, if you know, okay, so let's take this last session. And I only do these as exemplar points, not as, you know, oh, how great I am. Because I know I can get a lot better. But there was a point where Lilith had been a bit quiet, and there'd been a gap of time where she had not said a whole lot, and she was tired last night. And Vivi is one of our great role players, but she was tired. So in the sack that she recovers from the hill giant, I purposefully give her a bit of disappointment at the beginning. You open up the sack, it's just filled with coin. You saw her sink, because she doesn't care about coin as a character. But then I mentioned that there is twine and there are teeth at the bottom, and she perks up, and it gives her a moment of role play. So you as a DM, it can be something as simple as that. You can point things toward the players that feel very authentic, but give them their moments to shine. And I think that's really, really important. Before I move on to the next topic, any other comments on that, Evelyn? All right. If everyone needs to be organized, no penalty for those that don't. No, that's right. Now, the only penalty I have for those that don't is they tend to not get as much XP. Because when I run my XP, and I tell the players, you get it not just for the CR ratings or the damage or the criticals that you run, you get it for the role play, and I will highlight your role play moments. So if you're not as engaged, you might not get as much XP, but that's as close as I get to punitive. All right, so let's jump into some other topics. One of the ones I want to talk about first is pace. And pace, actually I'm going to pull up a Reddit here on my phone. I'm not going to pull it up on the screen because I did this last minute and I didn't have it ready, so that's all. But this was pointed out in one of the Reddits, and I agreed with this so much. It is important to make sure that you have good pacing. Keep things moving. Seriously, speed is deeply important to immersive gameplay. The moment things start is when the fiendish phones come calling. So people they get bored, they're looking at their phones, they're disconnected. So this individual said, and their comment was deleted, and that's interesting enough. But anyway, so it said, keep combat moving rapidly. Don't let players debate for 10 minutes before they enter a room. yeah, I'm a little bit iffy on that. If there's a reason for them to debate 10 minutes, I think about our virtual Greyhawk Con session. When you guys were in the desert. You remember that? And the demon face erupted from the sands. There's a lot of debate, so there are moments for that. But in general, I think it's important for a DM, if you're going to keep players immersed, you have to keep pace. If any one part gets too long, and this is not just for streamers, this is for local, sorry Jay, I'm not pointing at anybody's players. He said it sounds like his old fart players. Some of your old fart players are my fans, so be careful. But I think the idea is that anything that goes, what was it? I heard somebody once say, if you don't strike oil in 10 minutes, stop boring. You know, because you're getting to a point where you're losing your people, and that's not just a Twitch audience, that's your players. You can see it when they start looking around, body language will tell. And that's tough because as a DM, you don't want to do something which is totally artificial. You see your players getting bored and a lich drops from the ceiling. No, okay, that's how I got your attention. But yeah, that can work. But there are techniques. So last night, let's come back to last night's session. I knew where you guys were traveling. I knew Yaj Tox was behind that rock, but I waited. And I waited until I felt like Brim and Gimbal had had enough time to develop that dialogue, so the spotlight on those two players. But when I felt, not that they were doing anything wrong, they were awesome, right? They could have gone on for another hour, I would admit it. But when you start seeing the other players maybe feeling left out, or the audience getting a little bit tired of that train, then you as a DM implement something that can move it to the next stage. So comments on that, Evelyn?
Roll for perception.
Yeah, or like sometimes, like I'll be honest, there's a little DM trick I probably shouldn't tell. Every once in a while I'll say, Evelyn, roll D20.
Yeah.
It's not for anything. It's just make her roll a die and wonder what it's about.
Suddenly I'm like, what is going on? What am I missing?
And most of the time it is, but I'm not above doing that on occasion, just to keep everybody engaged and to keep the pace moving. Or is it? That's right, Hutchback. Well, no, and I think, Robert, that's one of my big things. In our game, I really feel like we play not for the audience. The only part of the audience I think we play for is interacting with the mad chatters. I love that. That was my biggest fear, and we got a lot to get through and not a whole lot more time. We're going to go for another 35 minutes or so. But when I had never Twitch streamed before, and I've mentioned this on some other streams, but I've DM'd and played for 40 years now. And when I thought about Twitch streaming, the first thing I thought of was it's going to ruin the game. Because I'm going to be so focused on the stream and the the viewers and the chat, and it's going to take me out of my DM immersion in the game. What I have found is that has not been the case with one exception. Can you guess the exception? Not an event, but a type of event, Evelyn, which gets me distracted.
Somebody said something really funny in chat.
Okay, there's two. You're right. There's two. Yeah. So you're getting some static feedback. Amanda, is anyone else getting static feedback? Everything looks good here on my end.
I'm hearing it in Zoom as well from the audio every now and then.
Okay. Hang on a second here. Let me just kill the ambient music and see if that's the culprit. I want to give you only the best AV experiences here on Blue Box. Does that change?
Oh, I hear it right now.
Are you hearing it right now?
Yeah, I'm hearing it.
So it's not the ambient music. It's got to be something with Zoom. Because I don't see any static.
Okay,
Nope.
It's better now.
It's better now?
It's better now.
Okay, I think I'm too loud. Hang on, let me turn down my mic. That's probably a good idea for me to do anyway. Because I did notice, I meant to mention this on our last stream.
Yeah.
There's such a disparity between my volume and the player volume. Mm-hmm. And I think so is there less static now?
That's much better, yeah.
Much better. So
much better.
It's just me getting to a large solar storm for tomorrow, really. Okay. How's that sound to everybody now? Much better. Okay, so you're still hearing me well, but maybe I'm more balanced with Evelyn, hopefully. Okay, so where was I? I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about what.
The two times I can get
yeah.
One is hilarious chats from the chatters, and that happens all the time. But the main one is technical glitches like that.
Oh, yeah,
So when there's a technical glitch, but other than that, I'll go long stretches of time playing a Twitch game and forget that I even have a Twitch audience because I'm just immersed with the players. So it's something every DM has to judge, but it can be a challenge. Okay, so pace, coming back to that, yeah, tech fails. That's right, Set Monkey. The cams keep flashing white? No, that's got to be you. Anyone else seeing cams flashing white? I've never seen that. I'm not seeing anything on my slobs. If you're just screwing with me, Jay Birchfield, I will hunt you down.
You're not too old to get grounded.
Yeah. The cams are flashing?
What is going on?
But Mystical Unicorn said they're fine. Real Dorgrim said occasionally. All right, so not consistent. Well, should not be ever. That's got to be a Twitch thing. That's not, the slobs looks great. Zoom looks great. Let's just keep going. All right. It's done it a couple times, like I have not switched. Oh, you know what? I did notice when I switched my my background for the monitor, everything got dark, so there might be something happening with that. But let's just move on. All right, so pacing. As a DM, be aware. Just be sensitive to the moment. How long have you spent in a certain scene, in a certain topic? And to me, it's like an intuition. You can feel it. You can feel when the game is lagging. You can feel when your players are disconnecting, and that's a chance to move it along. All right, second topic, monster reality. And this may cause a cam flash. I'm curious if this is when it happens. I'm going to switch that monitor screen to a Dragon magazine. Didn't do it at all. That looked good. So this is Dragon Magazine 171. You got to love the cover art. If you are not checking out these Dragon magazines, you are missing out. Thank you for the sub, Real Dorgrim. Before I jump into the article I want to focus on, one of the things I always love to see, you can see this here, every Dragon magazine of this time had an article in it that was called The Role of Computers. You see that there on page 57. And this is such a real a flash into the past where you're talking late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, where PCs were taking off and they just had a minor role. Now think about what we're doing today. You know,
right.
We're on Zoom, we're streaming over Twitch. I've got Hue lighting that's running. I'm on multiple monitors with Logitech webcams and Stream Decks. All we're doing is computers. But how cool is it to, there's so many neat articles you can look back in these Dragon magazines that talk about that, and that's not what I wanted to talk about. But hey, Patrick, good to see you. And I'm glad that switch was smooth. Let's go to the article, and this is pretty 101, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but it's The Making of a Monster by Matthew Iden. And in this article, he talks about bringing your monsters to life. So we talked earlier about PCs being brought to life. So part of Immersion is PC backstories, giving the PCs the opportunity to connect with one another, to tell their stories, to relate to one another's stories. You know, just as an ancillary point to that, there's nothing worse as a PC than feeling like you've thrown out a nugget of your backstory, you know, something, and no one reacts.
Yep.
No one says a word, like they don't even hear it. And you're just like, you know, because like to you it was important. You were revealing something, opening the kimono, and then they don't even react. That's discouraging. So that's critical, but your monsters are also critical. Bring them to life. So think about what you would be like. So point one is, if I were a monster, how would you react? This can include things like questions of survival. Last night, one of the hill giants, he was badly damaged. He was intimidated. Millie had intimidated. He was dazed by Gimbal. He had been sliced by Brim. He turned to run. Morale checks. and self-preservation should be part of certain kinds of monsters. You know, obviously there are some that won't run no matter what. Brains make the monster. Play your monsters intelligently. You know, if they have flight, if they have invisibility, if they have other abilities that they can use to change the combat, then use that. If they would wheedle, if they would plead, if they would trick, if they would coordinate, if they would use terrain, if they, whatever they might do, and depending on their intelligence, bring the monster to life using those abilities. And I'll pause before I move on. Evelyn, any comments on that?
Oh, I agree. I mean, and even monsters within the same kind of quote unquote category, like dragons, for example, they have different intelligence levels too, depending on the type of dragon. So like playing them accurately to type would, you know, kind of goes hand in hand with that as well. So like you have to consider like all of those things and how they would react to the entire situation that you know, both monster and players are in.
Well said, well said. Hey, we'll see you soon, Jay. Thanks for being on with us, and we will be rating you at the conclusion of our session tonight. And Real Dorgrim, I don't know how I time it that well, but I'm glad I did. And Ash of the Bear, I am also surprised, but I'm glad to see that there's a Pathfinder 1E Monster Humble Bundle going on. And Bloodwild, I agree with your 3 Lord Gazumba shields. He is fantastic. Antagonists, whether or not they are the BBG, have motivations. Exactly. So what you just said there, Robert, the last point in this article, and let me zoom in on it a little bit better. In short, subjective role-playing, making use of natural advantages, understanding the power of a monster's intelligence, are all abilities that unfortunately don't have numbers or charts to help you utilize them. They are skills a dedicated DM develops over time. By taking time and care with each of your adventures, by using the tips in this article, again, this is Dragon 171, and it's all free and on archive. You can pull them up. You get all this stuff is free. By using the tips in this article, you should be able to convert humdrum, run-of-the-mill encounters into an exciting and believable adventure. All right, so let's move on. And so we have talked about all players getting involved, using backstories, which I've talked about before. We did a whole session on backstories. We've talked about pacing. We've talked about realistic monsters and monsters that appear to be alive. Now let's talk about the 5 senses. So I think this is something as DMs we can really leverage to our benefit. And I'm going to pull up an article here. I don't even know who this group is. They're called Cloud9 Tabletop. If they're horrible or they have some sort of subversive content that I don't know about, I'm not endorsing them, nor am I anti-endorsing them. I don't know. I Googled and I like their article. That's all I'm saying. So they talk about tips, and they talk about using the 5 senses. And of course, you know, you've got sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. And they give examples. So the most simplistic example here, let me zoom in, is a DM could say, the characters slide up to the bar at the inn. It's a bit crowded. Or the DM could say, your characters sidle up to the bar at the inn. The dusk is settling outside. The fire in the center of the room is roaring hot. It warms your bones to be near it. The sounds of hand cymbals fill the air as the minstrel plays in the corner, and the smell of well-cooked boar fills your nostrils. The crowds are coming in, and it's getting quite boisterous. So thank you, Diphamus. I didn't know that. So you're teaching me something. So this, to me, this is part of how I DM. Now, I don't always get it right, and I miss things. Like, one of the things I think I miss a lot is touch. I want to be more focused on touch. Like last night, when Brim sliced the belly of, or even, I might have done it when you stabbed him. I can't remember if I told you felt warm blood wash over your arm. But that feeling of touch, we tend to focus on sight, what you see, sounds, maybe smell. I use smell a lot. All kinds of, whether it's putrid or acrid or necrotic or, you know.
Josh talks his cologne, for example.
Yes, I think, but bringing all the senses into it is the point of this article. And I'm going to just blitz through this quickly, but the awesome byproduct of being descriptive as DM is it sets the tone for the players to do the same. And that's right. You can see that in our campaigns. When I, as a DM, start using descriptive elements, and I'm not saying I'm making them do it, but it creates an ambiance where the players start doing the same, and it really adds to the sense of immersion. Now, what if you say you're not good at that? No, you don't have to be good at it. This is not difficult. Just ask yourself, how you can describe what's happening by incorporating something other than sight. Now, I've talked about this. To me, anti-immersion, and I'm a miniature guy. I'm a terrain guy, right? So here, let me pull up. I haven't even used this.
Oh, your mic's about to fall, John.
Thank you.
So you know.
Where is? Oh, thank you. All right, yeah. Thank you so much, because I've only done that like, what, once, twice, 5, 10 times? Yeah. All right, so this guy hasn't even made an appearance yet. This is my biggest piece of miniature building authority terrain. This thing is like 20 pounds. It's monstrous. You've seen lots of my other stuff. But when you're a terrain DM and you've got minis, or you're a fantasy ground DM, or a Roll20 and you've got your pictures, it's so easy to go, this is what you see.
This is what it looks like.
So now you've even failed on sight, right? You're just using the prop. As a DM, talk about the crenellations, talk about the cobble and the structure of the stone and the mortar that's falling out and the weathered rain streaks that go down the arrow slits and the narrow eyes you see peering out, and maybe the broken bit of stonework off the side, the rain that's falling down, the winds that blow. Give them the description of what they see beyond just using even the most incredible terrain. That is not a substitute. I've had some details. That's right, yes. I've had some what I call theater of mind elitists. I don't mean to be unkind, who don't even like the use of this stuff. And that's ironic to me, because all I did growing up was play without any of this stuff. I know how to do theater of mind. Theater of mind to me is where D&D started. But these things are such nice things to add, but they should not replace not just sight, but sound. What do you hear? So we'll talk about mechanisms for that in a second, but the DM can describe the howl that echoes off the cavern walls and sends a chill down your spine. Now you've gotten touch and sound. The necrotic scent that emanates from below, what is that? So all of these descriptive elements of the 5 senses. So here's an example they give, adding smell, sight, and sound. As you open the door, your nostrils are filled with a stench of rotting flesh. You feel the gag, there's your touch, reflex instinctively as the odor reaches your system and wants nothing of it. You look to your right and your left, and you see large mounds of corpses with man-sized grubs crawling and nibbling on piles, right? So now you brought, in a very brief, this is not flowery language, this is not the prose of Tolkien, but it's just bringing those elements together, and then add touch. You reach for the door, the handle's cold and wet to the touch. You open the door, you feel the grip of a strong, impossibly strong roots gripping it, growing around your feet, out of the ground, wrapping around. So all of this, I'll stop there because that's probably made the point. But all of these things add to the sense of immersion as a DM, and you can just do little things. Echoes are fun. Hey, Harry Coin. I found the players are often fixated on the minis. Yes, that's right, Hutchback. And I think as a DM, that's one of your big responsibilities. Make sure the minis are they're the spice. They're not the main dish. The main dish is the DM. The DM's description, the narrative, and you use the terrain. And I like doing that, even with the most amazing terrain. You look at a guy like Jay. Jay has some of the most incredible terrain. Did you see the flashing there? I think that's what it was. It's for something's happening when I'm switching the actual images that's creating that flash. I'll figure that out. These things create a deep sense of immersion. The minis then become the spice, the sauce on top, the icing on the cake.
See, for me, as far as like minis versus theater of mind goes, like when I very first played D&D, it was all theater of mind. Like we didn't have minis or any of that. And as a player, I think that the main thing that the minis help me with is when we're in combat and knowing where I am, what I'm, within the space of, because that was the hardest thing for me to visualize without that, was the combat part of D&D. I could handle the roleplay part, and imagining all the scenery, but it just, that being able to actually see where I am spatially in combat is what I think is the best part about having the minis on the table.
No, I think that's well said, Evelyn, and I think that's one of the main points of minis. You look at Jay's stream, so much of what he does with the mini play is about combat placement, distances. Now, when you're Twitch streaming, I do like the fact that it creates, especially if you got a good setup, it could really add to the visual element. But also what it helps with is what if you have someone that pops in 2 minutes after the DM gave this great description, and they don't have the benefit of hearing what the DM said, but they can see the terrain. If the terrain gives them at least a sense of what's going on, so that is where it truly does become something which helps with the stream, as opposed to if I just have 4 people in a room, they know what I said and it's not necessary. So there's lots of uses for this, but I think the minis are fun. Heck, I played with minis when I was a kid. I didn't have the terrain stuff and my minis sucked, but I had them. Even Stranger Things, they play with minis, right? So just don't rely on them too much. Limit OOC. That's my next point as we are rounding this out. If you want to stay immersive, don't eliminate OOC. OOC oftentimes creates some of the most fun moments in a game. Players want to laugh. DMs want to laugh. You want to connect with things in real life. You occasionally want to riff off one another with some esoteric comment. If you've got mad chatters and they say something funny, or you want to, that you can't. You can. You shouldn't kill that stuff.
Right.
That is part of the game. What you should do though is make sure you govern it, you limit it, because if the game is constantly interrupted with out of character comments, anachronisms, modern TV shows and songs, or in a Twitch world, constant interruption by the DM with what's happening in the chat, you break immersion. Now, that's not an easy thing, and I welcome criticism. If you guys think I do too much or too little, I ask my players, I poll them all the time. But I think whether you're just doing a local tabletop game with just your friends, and you want to laugh and talk about the pizza you're eating or the beer you're drinking or the grumpy, the guy across the table busted, or the rat he cracked, or whatever your euphemism is, that stuff is fine every once in a while, but don't let it become intrusive to your game or you will break immersion. Chatters are accepted. That's right, my TV. Okay, so let's just do a quick recap so far. I got a couple more. We've talked about all players being involved, using their backstories and weaving them into the game. We've talked about pacing. We've talked about monster intelligence and monsters really being living, breathing creatures. We've talked about using the 5 senses. We've talked about limiting OOC. Let's come back to the senses quickly. I don't want to talk about sound, sight, and sound and sight are the 2 things you can add to your local game that are helpful, whether it's terrain, whether it's pictures, like you'll see me, and I think tonight, for whatever reason, this is probably going to give you the flash and yep, there it did it again. I'll figure that out. You pull up a picture of your monster. So you still describe this orc, but then you give them like the most nasty thing you can find. That is fun to do. Or using lighting. So when it goes to night, right, and I change now, or when there's a fire burning and everything goes red, and I have the gamma settings on my camera, so it's trying to compensate. You can best see it when I first switch there, or when I go to fire, or how about this one? Actually, I took my green off, but I've got one for green, so you're in a graveyard and specters come up. You can use lighting. If you don't have cool lighting setups, turn down your lights, turn off your lights. I remember 10 years ago playing with my kids, I flipped off all the lights and put a flashlight to my face like we were around a campfire. But you can use whatever you have for lighting effects. Sound, sound is so easy. If you have Sirenscape, that's wonderful. I highly recommend it. If you don't, there's tons of stuff on YouTube. And in fact, if you're not streaming, it's even easier. You don't have to worry about the content and the DMA and all that stuff. So find ambient music, find lighting that creates an ambient theme, and you can take your DM descriptions And now you do more than just describe the verdant lighting, you put on green lighting. You do more than describe the haunting tones, not instead of describing, right? Still describe, but then add something to the background and you can create more of a sense of immersion.
Well, and also I would add to the visual and tactile aspect is like when you create various props like letters that we read and items that we find.
Ah, there you go. I didn't even write that down, but yes, that's right. I'm big on maps and letters. Occasionally I'll do three-dimensional objects. I like the wayward bolt tokens and things that are being created, but you've seen, like I do a lot of maps, drawings, letters, tactile things, especially for the local players. Now, if they're not local, I'll have it and I'll put it up on the screen, you know, so they'll see it there. That's a great point, Evelyn. All right, for sound, I think everybody knows, I do use Sirenscape, I use YouTube, I shout out Adrian von Ziegler all the time. I use this as well. You've probably seen this on one of the other LMAs if you've been on with us. I use an Elgato Stream Deck. There's a couple versions of this. A small one, it's not that much. How I say that? It's like probably $100, so it's not super cheap, but it's not super expensive either. You plug it into your PC. Hey, thank you for joining the Mad Chatters. Welcome. Hey, if anybody else is watching and you haven't followed, please follow. If anybody is a sub and your sub has expired, please resub. But Stream Deck is great, and you can see it's a little bit small there, but you can see that I've got all of my views. So when I click, I'm going to go between, I don't have any of these programmed on here because it's a different one, but I can kick off my view. So like you see here, night mode, that's a button on this. When I click this Elgato Stream Deck, that kills my lights. When I want sounds, I have a battle sound, and then I have folders. You can open these up, and all kinds of other sound effects can be kicked off. If I want a dragon to roar, I can click that, and I'll get a dragon roar. You have all of these really slick buttons that you can run on a Stream Deck that can connect to your lighting, your PC, your scenes and slobs or XSplit or whatever else. Thank you, Asher the Bear, for the sub, sir. Ancient Gamer shared the sub. Thank you. Hey, Dragon Crafting Guild, we've been talking about you tonight, sir. Your ears should be burning. So just a couple other thoughts with the five senses: lighting, terrain, or digital stuff like using Fantasy Grounds, and then using your sound effects, using YouTube music. Put a sound bar, put some computer speakers, whatever you can do, and then add that to your DM narrative. Don't replace the DM narrative with it. I'll pause there. Any thoughts on that, Evelyn?
Well, I was gonna say, like, all of these things, like the Sirenscape, the lights, you know, props. Even now, a lot of people make special candles that you can light that smell like things, like, you know, wet soil and all of those various things. Or, you know, some people cook food before they start their session so that you know, people can partake in whatever the tavern food is. Whatever, all that stuff is additional. Like, as a DM starting off, no one should ever feel like that those things, those tools, are necessary to create a good immersive game. And that's a thing to keep in mind, because it can feel very daunting for especially someone new to DMing or who doesn't use these tools in DMing, and feeling like that they are not providing what is expected. Don't feel like you have to do that. These are just the nice little bits of additional fun things that you can utilize to make your game immersive.
No, I think that's so well said. Now let me give you my opinion, because well, that's what this is about, right?
Yes.
So I think, like, cooking something that make the players taste, I think that could be fun. Do I really think it improves the roleplay immersion? No, I think it breaks immersion. I think it would create something where the players now are thinking about the physical thing they're putting in their mouth. Now, candles or scents, if you could do it really cleverly, more like, I think somebody mentioned the fog machine again, which I do need to think about a fog machine. But if you could have something that, Maztica, man, these old worlds were so cool. If you could have something that could be done very subtly, and the smell was there. But even with the sounds, like, I don't want to be disruptive to the players where, wait, hold on, let me launch this. Let me light this candle. let me kick off this music.
Right.
Let me pull out this dish that I cooked before the stream. To me, those are fun. And if you like to do that, I'm not criticizing. I'm just telling you why I don't do it.
Yeah.
To me, that's more glitchy than it is immersion. That's just. All right. Are you mad at me, Evelyn?
No, I'm just saying that like there are things that people do. For new DMs and DMs who don't do that, not to feel bad about not utilizing those things.
That's right.
I'm just saying that is things that other people have done in games, because I did a little bit of research before tonight's stream as well, and those were some of the things that came across.
Well done, exactly. And so no, I don't, and that's the other. I don't know how to deliver smells online. Is that possible? I don't really think it is, but it is. Not yet. All right, so
no,
let's continue to wrap up. Hey, I've got a couple more important ones, so don't leave yet. So we've talked about pacing, monster reality, the 5 senses, limiting OOC, using other tools, sight, sound, lighting. Next, let's talk about coherence and consistency. This is one of the more subtle points. What I mean by that is, so an obvious example is, of course, the backstory. You know, you bring something in and then it appears later. But to me, it's more about NPCs. It's about villains and monsters. So if you're a Greyhawk Awakening fan, or if you've watched our Runelord campaigns, you'll know that there is consistency of NPCs and their themes and their motivations, and the villains. Sometimes they get killed that session, sometimes they get away, sometimes they reappear, and it creates a cohesion of the story. Right. If the players feel like you tell them something in session 12 that is utterly inconsistent, and not in a clever way, like in a like in a you don't even know what you're doing way, or you don't care way from session 2, then that breaks the immersion for them. Part of immersion, and we're talking now about persistent campaigns, right? Mm-hmm. If you're doing a one-shot, that's not as big a deal.
Right.
Right. But when you're playing a campaign that goes on for 4 months or 4 years, or J. Scott 40 years, then you have to make sure that there is cohesion and consistency to your villains, to your heroes, to your NPCs, to your storytelling. That makes the players feel like they're in a real world. And I have a corollary to that I want to talk about, but I'm going to pause there. Any thoughts from you, Evelyn, as I look at the chat?
Yeah, I would agree. Like, making sure to keep those things consistent, and that's not just for the DM either. That's for the players. Like, make sure you're taking notes. Your DM is telling you things. It's very important that you're paying attention. Oh gosh, that
gets on my nerves so much. Yes, exactly. There is nothing that I'm sorry, I'll let you finish, but there's nothing that drives me nuts as a DM. I put all this time, and there's lots of memes on this, so I know I'm not alone. But you put all this time into developing some great story. You give them all these really cool clues, and they don't even remember, and they don't pay attention. And then you go, and you see the green disc. Mm-hmm. And they all look at you and go, "Oh, what's a green disc? What's that for? We don't know what that was about." That's so interesting.
But like, just not remembering NPCs that you've interacted with a lot too. Like, that in particular, like, really bothers me. Like, when players come up to an NPC that they have been given so much like information about this NPC's story and like what motivates them, and then they come up to them and they do not remember at all the interactions that they had before, why this person is significant. Like, I've seen this happen in other streams, and it is so frustrating, because you cannot expect your DM to carry the entire weight of the story. You have to be actively participating. That means take notes. These things matter.
Exactly, I'm with you. And Josh said he blames the DM. Yeah, I do too. I blame the DM for bringing the wrong players into his campaign. No, I love Ancient Gamers. Here's a way for immersion. A can of Heinz spaghetti heated in a bag. Eyes closed just to reach in and pull out the jewel. Well, Real Dorgrim, yeah, they could not focus for 2 hours. Yeah, so you got the wrong group then, right? Or, you know, as a DM, maybe you can look at yourself and say, are there things I could do better? But generally, I'd say you probably got the wrong group of players. That's so critical. The PC staying connected to what's going on, and as a DM, you can encourage that. So if you've watched, especially our Runelords campaign, that's a great example. If you look at all the players that have gotten the most love from the DM They include Cade Cardinal, not just because that's my wife, but because that player is always super active with roleplay. But who's got wings flying above everyone else? Who has been featured so often in all? It's this player here, because this player pays attention, invests, knows the NPCs, remembers the reasons that we're doing what we're doing, and stays engaged. And as a DM, you reward that. To whom that hath shall be given. Now, you can still coach up. I'm not saying you ignore the ones that aren't, but reward those players that are engaged. If you get a Josh, I had Josh on my virtual Greyhawk stream. He was like, I don't know, pretending like he was doing something for the whole con and acting like he was so busy with other stuff, and half the time he wasn't paying attention. He didn't get any love from me. But if you got a player that's really invested and engaged, you give them the love. All right, let's finish here. Right, so last couple I had, two things. One, coming back to the player staying in character and the backstory. Somebody mentioned earlier, and if you're still on, yes, you do. If you're still on, who said impact on game world? You know, this is what we want, even in our CRPGs, that's what you want, right? When you're playing, you want to know that your actions can actually affect the world.
Well, and they should.
They should. Now, if you're a peasant, you're a first level character, you're probably not impacting too much. But
I mean, like, they really should. The things that you do, that's why, you know, certain decisions have to, like, for most recent example that I can think of right now in Greyhawk Awakening, was giving the crystal over to Burn because he said otherwise all these people could die. So that choice in that moment was a heavy one because, you know, it impacts the world. And now with you know, them reclaiming the crystal because, you know, they're worried about Burn not being able to hold on to it and him getting attacked again. But like, it matters, and it puts the onus on the party to actually have to make tough choices. You want them to have to make tough choices sometimes.
Exactly. So well said. And so those choices then, that was one example, but let's take others. Like, look at what happened with our Rune Lords campaign. You now have an entire valley that's been flooded. A river has expanded past its banks. Towns have been wiped out. You've taken over a keep. These are major events impacting the world. That creates immersion. You're not playing in a static, hello, are you wearing your blue box shirt, Esther?
She is. She's wearing her hoodie today.
Can you hold up? Let's see it.
Come here.
Can you hold it? We got to see the. Sorry, I'm not trying to, like, you know, use your daughter here, but she's adorable and she's got a great hoodie on.
Come here.
You tried to do it pretty good on your own. Look at that! Oh, it's a sparkly blue box shirt. You look so beautiful. Congratulations. Oh, I love her. She spreads the hair.
I need to show it off.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so last one I want to mention is the use of other tools. That one I use is Discord. And Discord keeps our game going between sessions. That goes back to cohesion. It creates a sense of stickiness and connectedness between the sessions. That's just one idea. Some people have websites, some people use blogs. Whatever you use, find ways to create a cohesiveness, and that will improve your immersion. Best product placement ever. That's right, Mike. It's so true. It's so true. Those eyes, my gosh, they pop off the screen. You got to stop. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. And before I'm done, I have a question for the chatters. We're going to raid Jay here in a second. For the chatters, be honest with me. I love critical feedback. This is how I get better. I don't care if you're 40, you're 14, or you're 84. You should always be open to critical feedback or suggestions on improvement. I would like the mad chatters to tell me, hey, one or two things you think we could do to improve immersion here in our Blue Box game. And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to recap all of these things. One, get all players involved. As a DM, make sure you find ways to keep them involved. Encourage them, pull them in an authentic, non-artificial way. You can do it. Use their backstories in that process, which means you have to be familiar with them and find ways to don't do it all at once. Don't have the whole backstory unravel in session 2. That's not what they want. But like bleed it out over time and let it weave into the story. That creates that cohesion and consistency. Use pacing. Keep your pace. Doesn't have to be fast and frenetic. There are times for slow. There are times for the campfire and the role play and the slow stuff. But just make sure as a DM you have your finger on the pulse of that pace. Monster reality. Make them like, even when we play our role play, our CRPGs, we want the AI to work well. We don't want the monsters to act dumb. They should have fear if it's the right kind of monster. If they're prone to morale failures, if they're intelligent, if they can be negotiated with, if they might flip sides, whatever it is, if they're going to use terrain, whatever they're going to do, if they've got items, make them use them. Find ways to make those monsters feel more real. Use the 5 senses. Use all sight, sound, touch, taste, smell in differing degrees, but implement those as a DM into your descriptive elements. Limit your out-of-character stuff. Don't eliminate it. It's part of the game. It's part of the fun. Everybody likes to laugh and do fun stuff and silly stuff, but don't let it disrupt the immersion of your game. Going back to the sight, sound, touch, smell, use tools. Whether it's YouTube or lighting effects or Sirenscape or minis or terrain or fantasy grounds, use those as an augmentation, not a replacement for your DM narrative descriptions. Keep that coherence and consistency. Make them feel like the NPCs are real and part of a living game world. Make them feel like what happened to that NPC before still matters now. Make them feel like, you know, if they cut down a tree, reference that tree is gone when they walk back by the town the next time. They remember what they've done. That cohesion and coherence and consistency makes a huge difference in immersion. Make sure they have an impact on the game world, not just the cutting of a tree, but bigger things. Make sure what they're doing is changing the world around them, even if it's small or if it's large. And then lastly, use as many other tools as you can between sessions. If you're a once-a-week gamer, use Slack, use Discord, use video chatting, Zoom, whatever you can do to create connections in between the sessions. These are just a few of the tips that we here at Blue Box offer to all of our friends as DMs. All right, I'm going to look at the chat. Any comments or questions about any of that, Evelyn?
No.
All right, so you did a mic drop on me. Okay, so let's see here. Any comments or suggestions? No, dinosaurs will not be part of how we increase immersion. Marry together the NPCs in their backstories. If I understand what you're saying, do you literally mean like matrimony, or do you mean connecting? I want to make sure I understand what you're saying, Asher. Give them, okay, so yeah, you meant that. So give them connections they didn't know they had. That's a great way to do it. That's backstory utilization is such a great tool for a DM. Let's see here. Good point. Catching, yeah, okay, sorry. This is where curmudgeon starts to show. The sub and follow animations are they so distracting? All right. So we have tried to limit them. Is it the video? Is it the size of them that's distracting? Or here, let's work on this real quick, all right? So let me show you the follow. Whoops, hold on. That's not even where it's supposed to be, because that should be up above it. Let's pull the alert box up to the top where it's supposed to be. Let me kick it off again. So let me do subscription here. All right. So is it the size or the sound?
The volume.
It's the volume
for me.
All right. I'm going to turn down. Let me see if that does the trick.
Because I noticed last night when we were talking to Yosh Talks that the sound actually was over some of the conversation.
Look at that. You are making changes, Mad Chatters. All right, so let's try this. Does this sound better? Still too loud, huh? Mm-hmm. So let's go properties here. And global audio moderator. Source. I turned it down some. Didn't seem any different, huh? Okay. All right. I will work on that this week. That is, mark that as a note for me. All right. Anything else? Yeah. All right. So we got the alerts, and you were not curmudgeonly apparently. More Greyhawk lore. Yo, Josh, did you even watch our session on Tuesday night? Because I agree with you, but you got to watch to actually know how much Greyhawk lore is happening in that game. We don't have any Greyhawk lore on Sunday. We have some Greyhawk lore on Wednesday, but our Greyhawk lore is mostly Tuesday night, and I will take that to heart. We have a lot of that we're doing. They come in key moments. That's a really good point, Hutchback. I just interrupted. I had a Gary Con meeting. You are the best. All right, so anything else, guys? The only, and that's fantastic. You guys gave me really good feedback. The sub alerts are too loud. We're gonna get those down. Anybody else? Anything else we could do to improve? If that's the only thing we need to do, I feel pretty good about where we're at. But pop my bubble if there's something else you think we could do. And while I'm waiting, the bits for heals comments. No, I didn't. What was that? Did you see that, Evelyn?
Yeah, he's mentioned it before, but it's just he does not like.
Oh, here it is. Bad for me to comment. I'm still not a fan of the bits for healing. You're working the game as opposed to the hand of God healing. You know what? Actually, Phantom, no, I struggle with it too. I really do. I might even take it out, and it wouldn't just be because you suggested it. Now, I do like the fact that our viewers are engaged and want to help and impact. Let's just say that's one taken under advisement, and I hear what you're saying. We're definitely going to turn down the sound of the alerts. We're going to look at how we use our bits and things. I want those to be things which help the game, make it fun, but I do not want them to be immersion destroying. And it is tough because, like, you've seen how I do it. Someone will, like last night, Patrick gave one. And you don't even get to see what you did for several minutes because I don't do anything right away. I find a way to weave it into the story, but it's still, yeah, maybe. Let's talk about that. It does let one in. So it's a double-edged sword, Josh. That's right. They feel overdone recently. Yeah, okay, so maybe limitations. All right, so lots of good impact here. That makes sense to me. I'm going to work on that. You may see some tweaks, not necessarily elimination. Like Benny's and set X bits for a specific player for a reroll of something. So we have similar things to that, Bobcat. I think it's the healing that people are really struggling with because, you know, if you do the 1,000 bits, you really kind of change the game, right? You can completely heal someone, give them back all of their skills and abilities.
Eric, you've been on a few of the shows.
Irda would be gone though. That's true.
I would have been Superman.
So I don't know. It's not an easy question.
That's a good suggestion from Set Monkey. Is because now there's more mad chatters to affect that, to either limit it or increase the cost of doing that.
Well, so I did increase the cost at one point, and that bounced it back down. But I could bounce it up, or I could make things only available for subs, maybe. So it's a more limited pool. I don't know. There's lots of stuff there. Yeah, she went from being impalpable to no, you're right, Robert. That's so true. And I thought about that because the way she got cracked in the skull, I was thinking some permanent damage, some scarring, a lopsided skull or head. But then when it would have been anyway, when a viewer does that, I feel like, okay, this is the standard I've set out. They're going to be healed, and they're going to be truly healed. And I was thinking about it last night. I'm like, man, but I don't know if I like that because she got hit in the head with a stone from a hill giant, like point blank range, cracked her skull, and now it's back to that CRPG thing. You know, she's up and normal the next day. So this is something, a permabat hair day. This is something I need to work on. It's not easy because I like the viewers interacting, and Josh is right. It makes an impact on the game that I like, but it needs some tweaking, and we will continue to tweak.
Now Lilith has a sweet scar, and you know, chicks dig scars. So
chicks dig scars. All right, so we're going to raid Jay. Hang with us. Let's give him a good raid. Thank you to all of you that joined us tonight. We'll be back on Sunday with our Rune Lords campaign. That's gotten more and more fun and gotten more and more followership. Thank you to all of our friends on Tuesday night. Lots of Blue Box love. Thank you, Asha the Bear. I hope it was a good show. I hope it helps other folks out there. And by the way, again, before I close, I love ideas. If you're on our Discord, and maybe you didn't want to call me out. If there's something I do that you don't like, or you think I could do better, hit me on Discord, send me a DM. I love critical feedback. I want to get better. And
do you want to ask the one other question that we had at the beginning, now that more people are here? About
what was it again?
Longer streams for Loremaster's Arcanum?
Yeah, what was it again? Oh, longer stream. Yeah.
Longer stream.
You want to pop that poll up real quick before I raid?
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah, let's pop it up real quick. So,
okay,
yes or no?
Write you down real quick.
Would you like a 90-minute LMA instead of a 60-minute LMA? I would most likely start it early, so it would be go at 5:30 Central instead of 6 Central, so I'm still done around the time that Jay starts, because I don't want to do anything that pulls away from Jay. I want to support him and raid into him. Hey, thank you so much, Mikey B. Memory Lapse DM, you have a suggestion you could do. Allow those in the chat to use bits to grant a hit die back rather than bits for straight healing. Or 2, looks like you have another suggestion, but I like that. I think that's a good idea. Or 3 hours on Tuesday nights or Wednesday nights rather. No, I can't do that, guys. But 90 is better. Okay, so
Hold up.
like they're already popping in the chat. Memory lapse, I like that. That's a good idea. Anybody else, if you have suggestions? All right, so it's allow in chat use bits to grant a hit die back. Straight healing. Yeah, I think that's good. We need to nerf that one a bit. Maybe increase the cost of the advantages, because I do think the advantages have gotten a bit out of hand. There are so many of them now that happen. I think we could increase the cost a bit. Again, not to generate more money, but to make sure that the economy of the game is right. Make healing only work out of now
For the heals.
Yeah. Now that's an interesting idea. Now, Josh, the problem with that is it does. I think it would discourage the viewers from using it because they really sometimes want to quote unquote run to the rescue. But that's also part of the problem. So, if you don't mind, Evelyn, you're our incredible resident note taker. Jot down all of these ideas. I want to talk about them with you and with some of our other players and some of our key viewers. Maybe we'll talk about this in Discord more. We can definitely improve. We can definitely create something that is a little bit better balanced. And it's never going to be perfect, right? Depending on the situation, you're always going to have it where it's going to feel a little bit awkward here, or they're going to feel so restricted they didn't impact. And today, where Evelyn or Millie is alive, Millie might be dead when she really shouldn't have been dead. It's actually had some good ideas on death today I was thinking about. That's how bad it is when you're a DM and you think about death during the day and player death. All right, so by a score of 6-3, you have most folks saying yes, they would like. What do other streamers that you like do? I like Jay. He basically uses hero points. I think that's really the only thing that I see him use. Honestly, I don't watch a lot of other streamers. I do tune into Nightheart. What Nightheart does, I love, is their AV stuff. A lot of other folks are using Fantasy Grounds. I don't know that I've seen particularly this stuff about healing and cheers done in a way that I love. But maybe it's out there, so that's a good point. But I think if you're in the no camp, you're 2-1. But you can always just tune out at 60 minutes, right? So if I do an hour and a half and you can't do that, no worries. So I may do that. No, I'm sorry. No, he doesn't use it for healing. I'm saying I think hero points are the only way that his viewers actually interact with the game, and that doesn't include healing. That includes a bonus on to hit rolls and saving throws and things like that. John is the innovator of how to use the bed. Thank you so much. All right, I'll check out what Castle Entertainment's doing as well. That's a good point, Josh. I should look at some other streamers and see how they do things. But honestly, I think we're doing a pretty good job here, and we're going to brainstorm this and do some tweaks. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and get ready to raid Jay here. Let me say thank you again. Not just for viewing and participating, but for the great suggestions. We just have such an amazing community here. The D&D community at large, the Greyhawk community, the folks that are involved with Jay and Orth Journal and all the other Greyhawk folks, and then the Blue Box community, all the mad chatters. You guys are the best. So all of you have a great night, and we will see you Sunday. Rating Jay.